Henry Villa or Villa? I'm not. What is the correct pronunciation?
It's Vila. It's actually one L. It's
Yeah.
last name is French, even though I'm not French. But yeah, that's where it comes from.
Okay, so I was correct the first time. Henry Villa, Tom Hitchcock. How are you?
Yeah, pretty good, man. Can't complain. Thank you for sharing some time with me today.
That's all right. I've been chasing you down for a while. You've been a bit like the Scarlet Pimpernel. But there's a reason why I've been trying to get you on board because you've got a fantastic story. You're doing some wonderful things. Unlike many of these other episodes, I know lots of these things, so I don't want to put a spoiler in there. But the floor is yours, mate. Tell us a little bit about Henry.
Yeah, listen, you can probably tell by my accent, not not born in Australia. In fact, it's kind of a little bit of a commingled accent, I guess. So born in South America, in what used to be a beautiful country called Venezuela, just in the edge of the Caribbean. Beautiful place. Uh, Probably one of the places with the most beautiful women in the world. In fact, we actually have some beauty pageants is like our national sport. So, but unfortunately, we weren't really gifted with the best governments in the world. So after a while, ended up being a pretty crappy place to live. And about 21 years ago, I decided to have a look at relocating permanently to a different part of the world. Up to that point, I had spent a lot of time in the United States. My mom, my dad's side of the family live in the United States. But yeah, I decided to, okay, let's look for something more permanent. We had a look at Spain, which is kind of part of where kind of my culture comes from. We had a look at other places in Europe, including the UK, and ultimately we found this little island, not that little, and it doesn't really feel like an island on the, on this part of the world. So I moved here in 2004. Uh, um, but yeah, that means the accent is a kind of a mix of sort of Latin American accent and Spanish, and every now and then a little bit of American twang still kind of comes through there, even though I haven't actually lived in the United States, certainly not for any length of time. So yeah, so move here, spent 25 years in the corporate world, primarily on kind of big transnational corporations. So I work for Santander Bank. I work for Toyota in an executive position over there. Work for uh, a number of other companies, and then I realized I get bored relatively quickly, like many entrepreneurs do. Ended up becoming a consultant because I thought the solution for that was to just, you know, get a job where the job actually changes pretty often. So, work for the likes of IBM and PricewaterhouseCoopers and a couple of those big corporations. And that was good for a while. But then I realized that the corporate world was sort of eating my soul. I got really, really sick of working for dickheads, really. So started looking at something kind of different that could get me out of there. Had a few friends who were in property, so that was the path kind of going forward. Started investing in property, making a few investments, having kind of a few projects, till took me a couple of years to effectively replace my income from the corporate salary that I used to have, to derive, a full time income out of property. Mostly passive. The biggest problem with passive income out of property is that doesn't solve the issue of what you're going to do with the rest of your life. So it's great to have that certainty and to have that freedom and being able to do whatever I wanted. The biggest challenge was then decide what that was, and in my case, I decided to kind of effectively found a company to help other people do what I had just done. So to be able to use property as a vehicle to regain control of their lives and to gain freedom, financial freedom, initially, but obviously once you have that, then you discover that you have freedom in all areas of your life. Um, and that's kind of what I've been doing for nearly a decade now. We focus on a very, very specific kind of type of product. We call them high cash flow rooming houses here in Victoria, and our properties that behave very differently to your typical rental. Um, because they provide a significant amount of cash flow every month for the person who owns the property. And we have created a system that allows us to deliver all of those benefits to the investor without any of the hassle. They don't need to do any of the work. We have a system and a team that takes care of the end to end kind of journey. The biggest challenge we have in that part of the journey, if you like, or in that business, is that we can only work with a relatively small group of people. So this year, we're probably going to work with 25 investors or so in kind of that journey. Um, but we had bigger ambitions. We wanted to get this message and these tools out there to a lot more people. So over the last 24 months, I've been dedicating a significant portion of my time to writing this. It's called The Rooming House Millionaire, and it's everything you need to do to invest out of the box for maximum profit. It explains the strategy, how it works, what the steps are. It actually pulls out the curtain a lot on kind of what we do here at Stone Horizon, but also how people can do this on their own, or how can they explore whether this is for them or not. Um, and yeah, it's kind of a good reflection of kind of our journey. This book became an Amazon bestseller within 2 hours of release, which is, I'll be honest, is both humbling and incredibly surprising because it's very niche, and I didn't actually expect that much people were going to be interested in this. But I'm glad that all those nights of late work and nervousness actually paid off. So,
Okay, well, listen, thank you for sharing that. Obviously, I do know part of you. Actually, I know a lot of your journey, but I was involved in part of your journey. Hence why I wanted to bring you on the show. It's I there's so many touch points there that anybody listening to this can appreciate. So it could be where they're living is not ideal for them right now. It's going through some change, and it's not a positive change. And there's circumnavigating their options. It could be that they're working for dickheads, to use your terminology, which I think a lot of people will put their hands up for. Okay, they may even be the dickhead. They might need to change their ways somewhat. And then you've got your situation where you're moving out and you're going into business, and you proposed quite a unique scenario there where you've now got your cash flow sorted. You're settled, your family's settled, different continent, the little island called Australia, and your money's in. Now what? And that's actually a bit of a privileged position to be in, because not many people get to experience that in their lifetime. Okay, um, and I want to focus on that because it points out what you're doing works. Okay, so it's a valid point of validation, but it's also an interesting point for those that we hope more people listening to this do get to that point, what they're going to do next. And it talks to a point that I find a lot with other people I speak to here, where they start talking about legacy.
mm,
Okay, so it's the legacy conjoint with purpose there. Okay, so it's what we do with our time, but how we leave the world and for others around us. Okay,
mm.
and that, if we're looking on sort of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's further up the top. Okay, and you've earned the right to start looking at life in a different way. Is that fair to say?
It is. Listen, it's a great opportunity to kind of be in that position. I completely agree. And I think part of the thing that I discovered through the journey is the way you look at all of this when you're at the beginning and when you're in the struggle and you're pushing and you're kind of moving forward and, 2 steps forward and 1 step back. It's very different than once you are in a position where you actually have choices. And in fact, the first chapter of the book talks you know, to a big extent on my view of what financial freedom is and how to deal with it. Because I realized as I was going through that journey that I've been sold a lie effectively. So, we have, we're living in an industry and in a market where there's, spruikers everywhere and gurus of all sorts of kind of, colors and approaches and, people trying to sell courses. And not all of these people have actually lived the journey, but more importantly, not all of these people are trying to communicate the reality of the world to people. A lot of them are just, either repeating what everybody else been saying for 20 years or just kind of imagining or trying to kind of position things that are designed to push a particular agenda, right? I used to have this view that financial freedom was something where, you'll calculate your expenses for the month, and then when your passive income is more than that, then I had this I described this visual in the book. It's like winning the Tour de France. You put your arms up, and like that's it, and you got there. And when that happened to me, it was an incredibly empty moment because you're like, okay, sure. It's like when you pay a telephone bill. Like no one gets excited about paying a telephone bill. It doesn't really change your life at all. So so I went into a journey to try to identify what my version of financial freedom was. And that version changes over time. Early on, I thought it was going to be about going and drinking mojitos with my friends in the Bahamas for the rest of my life, and that's really not what I wanted to do. I realized that what I can't stop working tomorrow, but I don't need my financial um, needs and those of my family are covered now forever. But I I enjoy what I do. I like working. I'm a bit of a workaholic if I'm happy to admit that. And but I could do that in a way that was much more productive. And yeah, sure, I still have my toys. Maybe, I don't want Lambos or jets or any of that stuff. But, each person has their own definition. And by the way, there's nothing wrong if you want a Lambo or a jet. If that's you, do you. In my case, I wanted to travel. I wanted to make a difference to other people. And I really wanted to, you're using the word legacy, which I don't use a lot because it's a bit self-serving, but it's about how do I make an impact beyond, my immediate environment? How do I change the world for the better? So that way, when the universe decides that is the end of my journey, then I leave the place, in better condition than when I got here. So.
And that by and that by definition is legacy. Okay. A positive legacy as well. There's plenty of negative ones out there. Okay. Okay. All right. So, um, tell us a little bit more about your niche component of the business. Okay. So, I understand it enough. I know there's similar things in the UK, so there might be some listeners
Yes.
from the UK listening to this that would make sense. Um, and it's no surprise to me that your book sold out because Amazon loves a niche. Okay. Um, um, but explain what makes it different so that people are clear about that, please.
Yeah, great. And listen, for those of you kind of hearing this and listening to this and watching us who have not come across kind of what we do, it's the concept is actually rather simple in the big scheme of things. So the problem in property in this country is that we have been sold this story that property is a great vehicle to save on taxes and we invest in property. It's fine if you lose money every month, doesn't matter, that'll come out of your taxes. And then at some point into the future, that property is going to be worth more than it's worth today, and that's where you're really going to make money. And at some point, if you have 10 properties or 5 or whatever, you'll be able to kind of live out of those. The problem is that that's a great story when you're at the beginning of the journey, but most people who have gone through it eventually realize that they're never going to get there. you're never going to be able to buy enough traditional rentals, or most people won't be able to buy enough traditional rentals to get to a point where instead of having to put money on the thing every month, that they're actually deriving a benefit. In fact, it's actually worse because most people start investing in property because they want to be free from their job, free from their career, and the more properties you have of that traditional type, the more hooked you are to your job because now you're depending on your actual salary and your income to be able to maintain the portfolio. So we wanted to flip that entirely on its head. Um, you heard early in the episode that born in a different place. I spent a lot of time in the United States and in places in Europe, including the UK and other places. And property doesn't work that way almost anywhere in the world, the way it works here. In most places, if you're going to put an investment and buy a house or an apartment or another kind of type of property, then you expect a return pretty close to immediately on that investment. Otherwise, why would you do it? And we discovered that in the Australian ecosystem, there was one tool for us to do that, which in Australia we call them rooming houses. Sometimes they're called co-living. In the UK, they call them HMOs, and in other places they call it kind of something else. But it's a simple kind of method where we create individual independent living on small spaces that is both really high quality but also really really affordable for the person ultimately living there. So we create these properties for investors. Again, we know our investors are our property owners ultimately are looking for freedom. So we created a team and a machine and a system that does, the strategy component to make sure that the property is in the right place and ultimately will provide the results they want. We have a building side of the business. We are our own building company internally, so we've been able to, create and train and manage a team that specializes in building this property with all the peculiarities that are required. And then we have a rental team who ultimately takes those properties once they're completed and they manage it to maximize, uh, you know, three key outcomes. One of them, obviously, the return for the owner of the property, but also the benefit to the tenant or to the resident actually living in the property. Because we discover along the way that happy tenants, they stay for longer, they take better care of the property, and in the long run, they pay higher rents too if they're having the right quality of service. So, by creating that journey, we have created a very, very special product. It's it's pretty unique in this country, and that product has not only allowed me personally to become kind of financially free and to have a portfolio of properties that will take care of me and my family and my family's kids and families forever, but now has allowed us to have a bunch of investors in this country who are on the same path and will
Yeah.
achieve the same things.
Okay, mate. And what I do know about you, you've got a nice infectious personality. You do like to talk, and I've had to give you a warning. We're going to cut you off at some point. And that's all fantastic. But the main thing I notice about you is you don't sit still long. Okay. As you said earlier in your career, you like most entrepreneurs, you get a little bit bored. Okay. So I know without knowing that there's things coming up. Okay.
Yes.
So without any spoilers or whatever, what have you got in the pipeline? What are you planning for the future?
Yeah, listen, you're completely right. I talk a lot. Clearly have no problem kind of talking. I have sometimes problem stopping the talking, but that's fine. I'll get the music like in the Oscars when we're done. But yeah, listen, we have a bunch of stuff in the pipeline, all in this particular space because we know a lot of this stuff. It's important, and we believe that these will change the world, and we want more people to help us kind of do type of these projects. I don't have anything to announce just yet because we're very, very careful that when we put an idea out there, that idea has been, considered and evaluated and tested and proven. One of the advantages that we have in this business is I am a client too. I have a portfolio too. So sometimes we use my portfolio to experiment a little bit, whether it's design ideas brought in from Japan and Tokyo and places like that, or whether it's some of the conversations that we have in the United States and New York and Florida and a number of other places. So I guess watch this space. You're gonna have to invite me back when some of those things become a reality. But yes, we're definitely always looking at improving what we do, how we
Good.
can achieve a better result for people.
I'll hold you to that, and I think next time I record you, I'm gonna have some Oscar music ready, just to slip it in. I'll just play it. I'm gonna hold me accountable to that, and we'll put it to the test. Okay, mate. Listen, that draws this to a close. Anybody listening to this, they love what you're doing, they want to make contact with you. How would you prefer them to reach out?
Yeah, listen, I'm very public in all the social media channels. I am actually going to make like a special offer to your audience. So you saw the book before. I want to offer a free copy of the book to anyone who is kind of watching your show. We'll figure out how we do it. I'll send you a link, and maybe we'll put in the show notes or something. So people can explore whether this is for them. And again, part of that, you'll have all my contact details there. So.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna be your first customer. I'll be picking a book out of you.
Sounds good. Happy to send you one.
Thanks, mate. Listen, lovely chatting again. I'll speak soon.
Awesome. Thank you for the opportunity. Take care.